We have a bombshell new legal case on our hands. The alleged robbery and kidnapping of rapper GucciMane. This case should serve as a warning to others who believe that using violence and intimidation tactics to rob others in our community is a viable way to conduct business. I'm here to say that it is not, and that if you choose to do this, we'll bring you swiftly to justice. Wait until you hear not only the allegations, but the evidence, surveillance, Instagram accounts, fingerprints. It is something to say the least. We have the criminal complaint that lays out everything, and we're going to break it all down for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, I have to share some really exciting news. Okay, we have spent so much time together here at Law and Crime obsessing over every wild twist late-night case that we wanted to find a way to get you even closer to the action. That is why we're finally launching Law and Crime Plus. This is your new go-to spot for thousands of hours of commercial-free episodes and exclusive case files where you can really dive into the evidence yourself. We really built this for the community of people that stay up late analyzing every detail while waiting for a verdict. So, it's just as much as your space as it is ours. Go ahead, download the app, check out the features, let us know what you think. You can head on over to lawndcrimeplus.com today to snag our limited time deal for just $3.99 a month or $4.99 for the year. How do you even make sense of this headline? Rapper GucciMane was allegedly robbed and kidnapped by other rappers. So, as the Department of Justice puts it in their released statement, quote, this week, 9 individuals, including well-known musical artists, were federally charged for kidnapping and robbing at gunpoint numerous victims at a music studio in Dallas, Texas, announced United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, Ryan Rail. 8 of the 9 were arrested in Dallas, Texas, and Memphis, Tennessee. The charged defendants include Lantrell Williams Jr. a.k.a. Pooh Shiesty, Lantrell Williams Sr., Rodney Wright Jr. a.k.a. Big 30, Kadarius Waters, Terrence Rogers, Darian Gibson, DeMarcus Glover, Cord Johnson, Darian McDaniel. Actually, by the way, there was a press conference held yesterday, and I want you to listen to that moment where they talk about that one person who was missing in this, right? So, there's people charged, but not everybody had been arrested. So, this is United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, Ryan Rail. One of the individuals that's been charged has not had his initial appearance yet, but our agents are actively working to locate and bring him to court. You and I wanted to touch on that actually. Eric Pushman of KRL, since there's one person you're still trying to get to come in. I guess it's under initial appearance. You had said that you're trying to work out because you're going public with this. Are you afraid at all that that's going to hinder eventually getting that individual in? Agents are working to find him. The complaint has already been unsealed and a number of these defendants have had their public hearing already. Their initial appearance and so it's already out there that this individual has been charged and so that information is in the public record. But I trust that the agents will be able to identify this person and find them and bring them to justice. Of course, that person can turn themselves in immediately. And I have a 32-page criminal complaint that was filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas that I'm going to break down for you as simply as possible. I want you to know the allegations, the potential evidence, the parties, okay? Gives you an idea about what this case is about. And I got to say this before I even get into it. You're going to understand after I go through this why these individuals were arrested in light of this alleged evidence. But all of them are innocent until proven guilty. I got to say that because again, you're going to listen to this and you might be saying, wow, the evidence against them is arguably really bad. But nothing has been proven as of yet. Okay, with that caveat, let's get into it. So, this is an affidavit. It is a sworn statement from an FBI special agent in support of a criminal complaint. And this is the statement of probable cause that crimes were committed. Okay, it starts by claiming that on January 10, 2026, the victims, who are only identified by initials, by the way, and they include RD, which we have to assume is GucciMane because his real name is Roger Davis. They say they were robbed and kidnapped at gunpoint at a music studio in Dallas, Texas. Now, There was apparently a scheduled meeting between RD and suspect Lantrell Williams Jr., and apparently this hip-hop artist is known as Pooh Shiesty, and he was reportedly signed to RD's record label 1017 Records. Now this meeting was reportedly about a contract dispute. This is again according to prosecutors, and it seems that Williams Jr. wanted out. So the affidavit claims that when RD and the other alleged victims in this case and others go into this office building, they realize it's closed. So Williams Sr., this is apparently Williams Jr.'s father, was apparently trying to book a recording studio that day for his son and for RD to record music. Williams Sr. was apparently talking to this unidentified individual just known as JN, another player in this who owns the studio. It's inside this office building. So now you get the geography what we're talking about here. So, the affidavit includes apparent stills from surveillance footage that arguably shows Williams Sr. speaking to someone on the phone outside the building. I'm going to give you a little preview here. There are a lot of stills in this criminal complaint. And by the way, that helps corroborate the details. It helps corroborate the timeline. It helps corroborate the events that are laid out when you have purportedly timestamped stills of this surveillance video. Now, an assistant reportedly arrives to help with production at 3:39 p.m. that day. And the affidavit claims that this father and son duo, the Williams, is arguing with somebody on the phone. Okay, they're arguing. And I'm going to read you this verbatim. Quote, at approximately 3:43 p.m., Williams Jr. and Williams Sr., Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, Gibson, Glover, and McDaniel entered the east side of the office building. The target suspects walked through the lobby area of the office building before going inside the studio. One individual with a dreadlock hairstyle, later identified as Gibson, can be seen on video exiting the office building and shortly thereafter returning with a bag slung over his shoulder. Again, embedded in this complaint are the apparent surveillance stills. Okay. Now, the affidavit claims they go into the studio where the victims were, the alleged victims were, and there are stills, by the way, they include of the studio lobby, the control room, the recording room, and at one point it is alleged that Williams Jr., who was, by the way, this is I was blown away by this detail, was allegedly wearing an ankle monitor, okay, goes to speak to RD privately about the contract. I'll talk about the ankle monitor in a second, but there is allegedly an argument and it ends up with Williams Jr. being accused of taking out a black Alaska-style pistol and pointing it at RD, allegedly demanding he sign the contract release paperwork. Now, RD allegedly complied, signed it. Again, we're assuming this is GucciMane. And there was the claim that RD seemingly GucciMane was not allowed to leave as he was being held at gunpoint. There are allegations that Wright allegedly recorded RD signing the paperwork and being forced to say he released Williams Jr. from the contract, and then afterwards it's alleged that Williams Jr. took RD's wedding ring and watch and earrings and cash. I do wonder if they have that video. Okay, I do wonder if they have that. But I'm going to read you verbatim again from the complaint. Waters, Rogers, Johnson, Glover, McDaniel, and Gibson produced handguns or AR-style pistols and began to demand property from BP and MM. BP was pushed onto a couch in the control room while an individual known to BP as CMO Damn Foo and part of Williams Jr.'s crew searched his pockets and stole his wallet. BP's chain and a necklace were stolen from his neck. McDaniel threatened to shoot BP for moving, but Williams Jr. instructed McDaniel not to. MM was choked from behind to the point of nearly losing consciousness during the kidnapping and robbery, resulting in scratches on his neck and wrist. Now, embedded in the complaint are what appear to be photos seemingly showing cuts or abrasions on MM's neck and wrist, and there is a claim that his wallet and watches and a Louis Vuitton bag and headphones were stolen. And if you're wondering about the security, right, didn't they have security with him? Well, the claim is that the victim's security realized they were outnumbered and outgunned. Goes on to say, quote, RD was pushed onto the couch in the control room. Again, we're talking seemingly about GucciMane, causing the victims to believe they were going to be executed. Williams Jr. placed the barrel of a firearm to the back of BP's head and ordered him and RD to leave the control room in the studio through the west entrance of the office building. RD then instructed CW and TD to escort them to their vehicle. As the victims left, MM turned to Williams Jr. and asked him if they were really taking his watches. Based on later recovered surveillance video footage, the target suspects left the studio and the office building through the east entrance at approximately 4:48 p.m. And from there, the affidavit lays out the photos of the alleged suspects purportedly leaving the building and also the cars that were believed to be connected to them traveling northbound. Now, how did they find the alleged suspects? So, this is really interesting. We're going to start with vehicle identification. So, the affidavit claims that Wright's father owns a 2020 Dodge Charger Hellcat with Tennessee plates. The authorities apparently used license plate readers to track the Charger following another car, a Dodge Ram. We're talking about 2:18 p.m. on January 10th. And they claim that that Dodge Ram looks like the one on surveillance video near the crime scene later that afternoon. They apparently used license plate readers to also link the Charger traveling very close to a white Buick Enclave. And using rental records, they determined that the Enclave was rented by Williams Sr. Let's go to electronic location monitoring. Remember when I said the ankle monitor for Williams Jr.? Well, apparently he was serving a sentence for federal drug and weapons charges. Home detention had to wear an electronic monitoring device. So, they're able to use location data from that device to seemingly track his apparent movements near the crime scene. And then the affidavit claims that Williams Sr. and Williams Jr. went to a Staples store earlier in the day. Why? The allegation is to print off the contractual release paperwork, which again was a key part of this whole alleged dispute and incident. Now, the feds say surveillance video and GPS data put them there. Cell phone records. You know, these are always key in a criminal investigation, right? I'm going to read you verbatim what it says. Stay with me. This is a big part. Investigators obtained cell phone records for Williams Jr., Williams Sr., Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, and Gibson, and telematics location data and records for the Dodge Charger Hellcat and the Dodge Ram. Records indicate Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, and Gibson traveled together from Memphis, Tennessee to Dallas, Texas in the Dodge Charger Hellcat and the Dodge Ram. They left Memphis on January 8, 2026 and arrived in Dallas in the early morning hours of January 9, 2026. The data from Glover's electronic monitoring device aligns with these cell phone records. On January 10, 2026, from approximately 2:28 p.m. to approximately 2:46 p.m., Williams Jr., Williams Sr., Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, Gibson, the Dodge Charger Hellcat, and the Dodge Ram were in the area of the Windrose Tower, a location Williams Jr. resided prior to moving. They all traveled together to the area of offense location, meaning the crime scene, arriving at approximately 3 p.m. The data from Williams Jr.'s electronic monitoring device and location information for the Buick Enclave align with the cell phone records. Williams Jr., Williams Sr., Wright, Waters, Rogers, Gibson, the Dodge Charger Hellcat, and the Dodge Ram traveled together from the area of the offense location, leaving at approximately 4:50 p.m. to the area of the Star in Frisco, Texas, arriving at approximately 5:07 p.m. Look how exact this is. Williams Jr., Williams Sr., Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, and Gibson utilized towers with coverage that includes the Star until approximately 9:30 p.m. The data from Williams Jr.'s electronic monitoring device and location information for the Buick Enclave aligned with the cell phone records. Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, Gibson, the Dodge Charger Hellcat, and the Dodge Ram. I have to keep repeating it because I think it's important that you identify the different parties here and the different sources of location traveled together from the area of the Star in Frisco to the area of the Comfort and where they remained overnight. Williams Jr. and Williams Sr. remained in the area of the Star overnight. Goes on to say, cell records indicate that on January 13, 2026, Wright, Johnson, and Waters traveled together with the Dodge Ram from Dallas, Texas to Memphis, Tennessee. So, if these allegations are true, you are seeing firsthand in detail how difficult it is in 2026 in an urban environment to commit a crime and not be tracked. This is a digital world, digital prosecution, and it can be very tough for defense attorneys to argue against the reliability of this data, particularly if you're combining different forms of data. Cell phone with surveillance, with GPS monitoring, right? But you heard the Comfort Inn. By the way, according to the affidavit, the Comfort Inn records confirmed or allegedly confirmed that Gibson paid for 4 rooms at the hotel. So now you have financial records, documentation. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the Comfort Inn and observed Wright, Johnson, Waters, Rogers, Gibson, Glover, McDaniel inside the Comfort Inn, all clad in clothing similar to what the suspects in the kidnapping and robbery appeared to be wearing. And in the affidavit are literal side-by-side comparisons of the alleged players. What they were seemingly wearing at the crime scene versus what they were seemingly wearing at the Comfort Inn. Again, all allegations, but you see why this is building up. Now, there's also a section about how investigators found prints. So, we're talking fingerprints, latent prints of Gibson and Rogers on these red Solo cups, too, that were apparently left at the crime scene. We move on to social media. This one's next level. Okay, so apparently investigators compare the descriptions of Williams Jr. from the victims, like how they described him, to an Instagram account, Pooh Shiesty, and investigators say it shows a match. And they end up doing that for Williams Sr. and Wright and Waters, and how even there are photos apparently of them together online, and how they even match state IDs with these accounts, too. And I got to call out Rogers here. Quote, on surveillance footage from the offense location, the individual believed to be Rogers can be seen exiting the building carrying what appears to be the Louis Vuitton bag reportedly stolen. On January 15, 2026. So, just a few days later, Rogers posted a video on Damfool 375 showing him wearing a Rolex GMT Master 2 with an oyster steel band that appears visually similar to the watch stolen from who provided investigators with photographs, a receipt, and the serial number for the stolen watch. Additional posts on Damfool 375 show Rogers wearing shoes similar to those he wore during the offense, and they embed photos allegedly showing this too. From Glover's Instagram, here's a sample January 11, 2026. A story featuring a large amount of cash, a Rolex visually similar to the one stolen from and a location tag of Dallas, Texas. January 17, 2026. A story showing Glover with a Rolex that appears identical to the one stolen from stating he got a new rope believed to be slang for watches or necklaces. January 19, 2026. Videos of Glover wearing a necklace with a 1017 pendant that appears identical to the one stolen from BP. So the allegation being you didn't only steal all this, you flaunted it. Now defense attorneys would say not the same necklace, they own this. These are kind of rare items though, particularly you're talking about that Rolex. And I'm sure they could have a dispute about whether or not these items were actually stolen or not. But again, timing, circumstances, the potential rarity of these items, something to keep in mind. Innocent until proven guilty, problematic. Now, something else that I have to note that may be used as evidence later on. So, when you apparently go to these guys like Instagram pages, from what I could see, they're pretty much scrubbed. They might have a couple posts still up, but that appears to be it. You know, Shiesty still has a lot on it, so it's kind of hard to tell if stuff is gone from that. But if prosecutors can prove that they deleted stuff to potentially destroy evidence or try to hide from authorities, that will be interesting. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe it was deleted after their arrest for some reason or after the charges. I don't really know, but it's something I've noticed. And then in this paperwork, they do something that I think is really interesting, and I'll just say kind of refreshing, because in this criminal complaint, at least for my analysis purposes, they really list out the evidence against each defendant very clearly. So, for example, Lantrell Williams Jr. eyewitness accounts state that Williams Jr. brought RD into the recording studio and demanded that RD sign the release contract at gunpoint before taking RD's wedding ring, watch, earrings, and cash. Eyewitness accounts also place Williams Jr. in the room when the additional kidnapping and robberies of and BP occurred. Cell phone records, electronic location monitoring, and surveillance footage place Williams Jr. at the offense location. Electronic location monitoring data also places Williams Jr. at a Staples location, with his father believed to be printing the termination contract prior to arriving at the offense location. And they do this again for every one of the defendants. And then it goes on to say, based on the facts set forth above, there is probable cause to believe that on January 10, 2026, in the Dallas Division of the Northern District of Texas, DeMarcus Glover, Darian Gibson, Cord Johnson, Darian McDaniel, Terrence Rogers, Kadarius Waters, Lantrell Williams Jr., Lantrell Williams Sr., and Rodney Wright Jr. conspired to and committed kidnapping in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1201C. By the way, when you hear like that they're together in the same room while there's other robberies going on, that's the agreement, right? Conspiracy is an agreement to commit a crime. And what were the overt steps taken in furtherance of that agreement? And my understanding, if convicted, each defendant faces a sentence of up to life imprisonment. This is again according to the DOJ. I mentioned this before, I'll mention again. There was a press conference that was held and it happened yesterday. I want to play you some more sound from it. Okay, it fills in some of the details. And again, this is the United States Attorney when asked about the victims. And I think it's interesting what he says. This case really underscores the importance of standing up for crime victims, no matter who they are or where they come from. And the incredible collaborative investigative partnerships that we have, not only in Northern District of Texas, but across the country. And we are all working together to make our country safer. As far as victims go, we won't get into at this time who the victims are or not. I'm not going to get into the victim stuff at this time. I think that more will be coming out there that will help clarify, but I'm not at liberty at this stage of the investigation to disclose that. Yeah. So, at the time of this recording, authorities haven't come out and absolutely said this allegedly happened to GucciMane. There are protections of victims in every state and every prosecution. So, you have to keep that in mind. But, you know how I mentioned the evidence, right? This is the U.S. Attorney talking about that evidence and the punishment. That was one of the reasons I wanted to list off some of the evidence that has been uncovered to date. A lot of this was subpoena work, search warrant work, and things like that in order to develop the investigation. And so the agents here with me, the agents out in the field, it takes a little bit of time to identify who did this offense and build a case so that we feel comfortable bringing the charges. So actually that's pretty quickly for a federal case of this gravity and this nature. And so I'm very proud of the investigative work, and it will continue from this office as well as our FBI and our local police department. If convicted of these charges, these arrests. How serious are these people? They're facing a range. So there's no mandatory minimum in this case. It's a range of punishment, and it'll be in the province of the judge, whoever gets the case. But it could be from 0 all the way to life imprisonment. And as you know, a lot of what will guide what's called the sentencing guidelines will be the individual's previous criminal history. The fact that one of these individuals committed the offense while on home confinement. So, actually serving a federal offense. Assuming that individual is convicted, that will be an aggravating factor for sure. Big case, big developments, big evidence. We'll continue to monitor what happens next. But that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, Instagram, My News Nation Show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.